views and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Welcome to Outdoors People with me, C.W. Getz, and her, Maya Marzaki. Good evening. It's Wednesday, October 4th, 2023. We have a really warm day here. It's kind of weird because it's 80 degrees Fahrenheit and cloudy. And I think this is going to be our last hurrah of nice warm weather for at least for some time. So they're predicting a little rain for us. It's very cloudy outside. 27 degrees Celsius for the rest of the free world, as we say here. And, so, Maya, what do you have down there in São Paulo, Americana, specifically Brazil?
So the weather is exactly the same of yours with 27 degrees Fahrenheit, Celsius, I'm sorry, and 80 degrees Fahrenheit. But it is just the first day of many of warmy and nice days here.
I think you're having, so I noticed this, like, I think it's every we lose 5 minutes every day or 3 minutes or something like that. So our days are getting shorter, and your days then would be getting longer. Am I correct?
Yes, that's true. Nice. Longer days, warmer days.
I'm coming to Brazil. That's it, man. I'm done. When snow starts flying, don't be surprised. So I go, hey, Maya, I'm going to be there in 2 days. You never know.
You are welcome. But let me tell you, it is going to be so warm this summer, like crazy warm. I'm not looking forward, actually.
So what do I do? Just bring a loincloth and I'm good, or what? Flops are optional, or what?
Yeah, that's all. Right? Well, and sunscreen and a cap.
There'll be me and Ilona, and who else have you invited down there? We're all going to be into this small apartment at once, I think. Right? Well, I have to tell you, Maya, tonight's guest is, this is his 26th appearance on my shows, 25 of which, right? We're on a show called The Camping Show that I did up until December last year. This is the first time he's on our show, this Outdoors People show. And this guest, our guest, in person. Yeah. And this will be the first time that you get to interview him. So I bet you're kind of excited about that, right?
Yeah, I'm so excited. I saw all the interviews he was in the last show, in the camp show. And when we met in person, I went crazy. He is just the best person, the most lovely person, the most interesting person I have ever met in my life. So it's such a pleasure.
Well, that's awesome.
Having him here and be a co-host. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Well, see, now I thought that was me, and I feel like I've been demoted, but that's okay because I was the coolest. But no, I'm just joking. But I have to tell you something. Earlier today, I said, one of the posts I did was I said on Instagram, tonight, the Eddie Van Halen of the canoe world and our friends Johnny and Colleen Kuehl, they posted this, they reposted it and put behind there Eddie Van Halen's Ain't Talking About Love, or Van Halen, I should say. So how cool is that? And I wish Cliff was on Instagram because he would love that. It's so cool. Yeah, well, sure. On with the show. So tonight's episode of Outdoors People is brought to you by Rutabaga Paddle Sports, providing time on the water.
By Campground Views, making camping easier.
By Duluth Pack, made in the USA since 1882.
And by Jacobson Kayak, pursuing joy through paddle sports.
Tonight's episode is Canoeing Wild Rivers with our guest, Cliff Jacobson. Cliff Jacobson is one of North America's most respected outdoors writers and wilderness paddlers. He's a retired environmental science teacher, an outdoor skills instructor, a canoeing and camping consultant, and the author of more than a dozen top-selling books and a popular video on canoeing and camping. Cliff is a distinguished Eagle Scout, a recipient of the American Canoe Association's prestigious Legends of Paddling Award, and a member of the ACA Hall of Fame.
let's say that you are in a car, okay, and you're driving, okay, and your friend is a NASCAR race champion, okay, and you're driving your Buick a little bit fast going around the curve. And so you hit the brakes as you go around, and your friend casually turns to you and says, this is not a good idea. You don't want to hit your brakes in the middle of a curve. And then you get a little indignant and you say, I've been driving for 40 years and I've been hitting my brakes in the middle of a curve for 40 years and I've never had a problem. So your friend turns to you and he says, try it at twice the speed. Think about that, because what Kevin and I do is twice the speed. Okay? Most people will never get to twice the speed because their idea of the most wilderness that they will ever do is the Boundary Waters canoe area. Okay?
Yeah.
They will never go beyond it, which is fine. So you can get away with a lot of stuff that you don't do right in a controlled park-like environment. Though you can die in the Boundary Waters too if you do stupid stuff. People do die there. Okay? But if you go to Canada, you go to Ontario, things are going to be a lot tougher.
You're not going to
You go to
away with that
Manitoba,
stuff
it gets
then, right?
even more rugged.
Yeah.
You go to the Northwest Territories and none of it. Now you're above the tree line. You don't have trees, okay? You have big, huge, pounding rapids, ice cold water. You make a mistake, you die.
Yeah.
Okay? In the Boundary Waters, you capsize, the water's warm enough, you got your life jacket on, you're going to live through the experience. You may not on an Arctic river.
And with that, welcome to the show, Mr. Jacobson. I love that.
Thank you, man. Thanks, God. See, W, when you said I've been on that show 26 times, I went, what?
I just counted
Did you
it,
actually count them?
I did. You know what? Just before the show, I go, I'm just going to go through the episode, the episode log, and I'm going to see episode schedule. And I counted 26 times. And that does include what's Darren's show up there? Canoecopia. Two of those.
Well,
So,
I
yeah.
love being on this show because you know what? You're the real deal, man.
Oh, wow.
You
I
are,
love you, man.
and it's true. So
I appreciate
Hey,
it.
it's great.
That
to
means
be
a lot.
here.
Yeah. And you haven't been sick. You're not sick of me yet. I just don't understand what I'm doing wrong. I piss everybody off at some point. So I'm just glad I haven't you yet. So yeah, and you know what? I appreciate you coming on the show so much. You saved my bacon so many times, saved my butt a lot of times by Cliff. We need to do an episode. And you're like, hey, let's do one on this. I'm like,
I just hope you're refrigerating that bacon because it's going to be getting a little right.
oh, yeah, every one of those episodes, you're awesome. There's no doubt about it. And I really appreciate it. So
Yeah, that's so nice having you here. And for the first time, I am the co-host, and I'm really glad because I saw all your 20-something shows before, and it was such a blast meeting you and Sue in person. So I'm very happy to be here with you. Thank you very much for your time.
Well, my pleasure. Let me tell you something about Maya because I met her. She lives in Brazil. She has a rugged, mean-looking Jeep. I don't know if it's called a Jeep. It's about the same thing. And she goes into the wilderness. She's the real deal, too.
she's badass, isn't she? She
Yes,
really
she
is.
is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. You and Sui are such inspiration for me. I'm so glad to hear that because I really wish to be like a half that you guys are and did in your life. So that's so nice to hear. Really. Thank you very much for those kind words. I'm speechless actually.
That rarely
so
happens,
nice.
doesn't it? That's neither one of us are usually speechless. I like that.
Right. Well, that's so nice. But I want to hear more about your canoe trips. So, what do you enjoy the most about canoe trips?
Well, actually, there's a lot of things I enjoy about canoe trips. Okay, you can be a canoeist, or you can be a canoe tripper. Okay, a canoeist is one who goes out and they canoe for the day and they come home, and that's wonderful. That's what
probably 99.99% of people do. A canoe tripper, and I'm both. Okay. A canoe tripper is somebody who goes out, puts all their gear in their canoe, and then goes down a river and generally goes for days, sometimes even weeks. And what I love about this, there's just so many things. One is it's totally away from the digital world. I have a phone like everybody else, but it's shut down and in a dry pack. It doesn't come out till the end of the trip. So there's no digital influence. Number two, I'm in the wilderness. Every place I look to the right, I look to the left. There's no people. There's just beautiful trees, clean water, and wildlife. So I think those are, and I think it's gene. Seriously, there's some, and yes, you can get bad bugs, you can get bad weather, you can get a lot of things that are uncomfortable. But there's a gene, I think, for love of wild places. And all of us have maybe a little piece of the gene. That's why we have fireplaces in our homes, or we sit around a campfire at night, because it brings back, hundreds or thousands of years ago, how we lived. And we need to have a piece of that in our lives. We need to have a part of it in our lives, or we go a little bit crazy. And I think we're actually seeing that in our society now, because because the majority of people don't touch nature at all. Most people don't even walk out in a park. And they've done numerous studies to show that if you are close to nature frequently, even walking in a park with trees around you and wild things around you, you are better mentally balanced because of it. So I can't explain what drives me so much. But I love that. I also love paddling rapids. I love the feel of being out there, and you are living not just in the moment when you're running rapids, you're living in the second, because every obstacle ahead is something you have to totally face and deal with right now. You can't let your mind wander to what's going to happen next week, or, oh, I have somebody who doesn't like me. No, you're focused on life right now. You live in the moment.
Yeah, you know what? That requires your full attention when you're going through a rapid, at least a respectable rapid anyway. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you need to work on your awareness. Like anything else matters. So that's so beautiful. That's so nice. And I really feel like that when I'm traveling and climbing. But I really saw some studies about that and how that's good, how we need to do that. And actually, we are so far for nature right now. But what basic skills do you need to have?
Oh, skills?
Yeah.
Well, that's true. It depends. I guess it depends on a lot of things. It depends on what you do, how much you value your comfort, and maybe even how much you value your life. So if your canoeing, hiking, camping, whatever is in county parks, you don't need anything. You just need your car nearby. If it gets bad, you get in your Volvo and drive home. Okay. If you're going further, if you're going to go down a local river for the day, you need a little bit more skills. You need to be able to handle your canoe a little bit and so forth. You go to the boundary waters, you need more. If you go beyond the boundary waters now and you go north and you get into Canada, Ontario, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Northwest Territories, Nunavut, and so forth, then you better have some skills, because you're not going to have anybody there to rescue you. And the thing is, people, if I do a blog, it's an interesting thing. If I do a blog on skills, I've got a lot of blogs on my website, all right? But if I do a blog on skills, how to make a one-match fire, how to do certain things, I get, say, X number of hits, okay? But if I do a blog on a piece of equipment, new gear, I get thousands, 10x, 100x. So in other words, what we have here is people don't want to learn things today. They want to buy something to fix their problem. But you can't do that. You can take somebody with a lot of skills and hardly anything, just to give them a bolted together pair of 2x4s and a log for a paddle, and they'll get through rapids that the person with the best canoe in the world and the best everything in the world who doesn't know what they're doing isn't going to get through.
Yeah,
so
and true.
It's
true.
it's skills. It depends if you want to learn or if you don't want to learn. And if you love the sport, truly love the sport, you'll want to learn. That's why we have places like Canoecopia where we get thousands and thousands of people come. They want to be there. Sure, they want to buy equipment and see what's new, but they really want to be there to learn.
Well, Cliff, now you bring up an interesting point here. So there are, and yes, skills are definitely more. We all, and believe me, you're the advocate behind that. I love that. But there are a few pieces of equipment that we do need. Now, give us just there's tons of equipment out there, but just give us maybe let's just pick out 5 top things. Let's just say 5 top things that you're going to at least need one of those, and so on. Give me about 5 of those.
Well, what are we talking about? Are we talking about on a canoe trip?
Yeah, canoe trip.
All right. So the top 5 things. Number 1 is knowledge of what you're doing.
Oh, that's
all right. Okay,
you're cheating on me here.
All right. Okay. So I guess if I had to pick, number 1 has to be my life jacket. It's got to be. Because I got it. If you I get in a canoe and I forget my life jacket, and I actually have done that. Actually, just once in the last 10 years, and it was actually in the Boundary Waters, and I was only a quarter mile from camp, and I turned right around the camp and got it and put it on because it didn't feel right.
Well, and I think that that's a piece of safety equipment, and you better have that before you even get before you start paddling. But I mean, what I'm referring to is things like, let's just say, outside of the canoe. Okay, we're talking about if you're going to go on a canoe trip outside of the paddling part of it, what kinds of stuff are you going to need to make a fire, pitch a tent, eat, that sort of thing? That's where I'm kind of going.
I would say, there's just so many things, but besides, first you need rain gear and proper clothing. You need, I think you need proper edge tools to make a fire.
Yeah. Well, what kind of edge tools are you talking about? There's 3 that I'm thinking of that you do in your video, and I love that.
Well, a knife, an axe, and a saw. Now you will talk to like hikers. They'll carry a knife, sometimes a little tiny pen knife, and that's all they take. They basically don't build fires. But I've been on canoe trips many times where fires actually, maybe it didn't save the life, but it was close. So besides, I think fire making is probably your top skill. And then you go to comfort. You need a decent tent. It doesn't have to be a great tent, but it needs to be a tent that does well in rain.
Yeah.
And that's something that you say all tents will do well in rain. Yes, but the focus is a little different. Some of the Western tents, more those that are more made in the Western United States, are really more designed for high winds, snow loads, ultra lightweight, that sort of thing. Whereas the ones that are more designed more for Midwestern and Eastern are more designed really for a rainproof, a really super rainproof, a little bit more comfort, just superb bug proofing, stuff like that. People think that if you spend more money on a piece of gear, it's going to be better. That's not necessarily the choice. I mean, that's not necessarily it. In fact, if you look at the people who spend most of the time out, they're seriously good outdoors people, backpackers, canoeists, kayakers, whatever. You look at their gear, then compare that to gear of the average person who just has money, who can buy stuff, and you're going to find that the most expert people, they don't have the best of the best. They've got real excellent stuff that's at this level. But to go from this level to this level might cost hundreds of dollars more. This works just as well. Okay, this may work a smidgen better, but if you know what you're doing, this works just as well. Okay, now I don't want to cite name brands for obvious reasons, but I can say to you, I have very good stuff, but it's not the highest quality stuff. Why not? I can't afford it. And most people who spend super amounts of time outdoors, that's where their money's going. It's going into trips. It's not going into buying stuff.
And you know what? Like you said, Cliff, and I don't want to hang on this too much because I got some more questions for you. But you know what? An adequate knife will do. It doesn't have to be a pearl handle knife, and it doesn't, gold plated or anything like that. But it's a great point. I'm going to ask you something here, shifting gears a little bit. When you, and this is kind of a weird deal because I remember when I did my first canoe trips years ago, but what are the most important, because you know, just take a couple, for instance, they're like, we want to get into canoeing. That's great. Okay. But here's one thing to consider. I want to know your thoughts. What are the most important things to keep in mind when you're choosing a river for your first canoe trip? What do you want and what don't you want?
Well,
That's a good question.
Yeah, I thought so. Yeah.
You know, I would say if you're going to go on a river trip and it's the first time you've done it, the most important thing you should have along is a friend who's done the river before you.
What if both of you have never done it before? This is a couple who are their first time on a river, and what are you doing? And we don't want to kill ourselves, you know, that kind of stuff.
Okay, if it's the first time you've ever done a river and you have no training in basic river paddling.
You got some paddling skills, but you're just, this is your first trip.
Okay, all right. So if you have paddling skills, like you can do eddy turns, you can do peel outs, you can do upstream and downstream ferries, things like that, you're at a pretty skilled point.
I mean, let's say that's a kind of a whitewater thing, and I don't think most people are going to be that far before they get out there. They're just basic skills. Basic skills.
It depends on if it's going to be a local river, and there's no real rapids, just current. Okay. Yeah. Then what you'll have some obstacles, down trees. You have to go around or under little short portages or something like that. So, you know, what you want to do, first of all, you want to find out if that section of river is doable. You want to talk to people and say, how hard is it? They say it's easy. It's a piece of cake. Then you look at a map. You want to make sure you always have a map of some kind with you, so you know where you can get out of the river if something happens along the way. And then you want to go with another canoe anyway. So if something happens, you capsize or the canoe is gone, at least you got a friend to take care of you. So you start out on a local river and you go from there. But before you do that, I still can't emphasize enough that you still need to have a few skills. And if you don't have the skills, you can get on the easiest river and you come around a bend and all of a sudden a tree blew down before you know it, and you don't know how to avoid it. You see, it's sort of like the kid who goes on a canoe trip, and before he leaves, his mother says, be careful, be really, really careful. And so what happens is he paddles over a dam. Okay, and then he has a problem. Hopefully he survives. But the point is, he was really, really careful. He just didn't know what he was doing.
Yeah.
Okay? So, I mean, when you say it's your first trip down a river, I don't know, what do? You're going to just be there and you're going to go around the bends. You're going to see stuff. There's going to be obstacles. And so now what are you going to do when you see the obstacles? If you can't back ferry, you're maybe going to run into it. If you can't turn right and you can't turn left, you're going to run into it. So even the simplest river is going to have obstacles on it. And that brings us to another point, which is sometimes rivers you've done many times before can be more dangerous than rivers you haven't done before. And the reason why is if you've done the river many times and people say to you, it's a piece of cake, I've done it many times. Well, guess what? It's a river. And every time it rains, the level goes up. And in droughts, the river goes down. Things fall into the river. So what happens is you get a preconceived notion after you've done it many times of how it is, and then you crash and burn. Whereas on a new river you haven't done, you're much more cautious. You come to a bend, you put your canoe ashore, you look around and see if what's around the bend is safe or whatever.
That's true.
So,
That's true.
Yeah.
It's not a simple answer.
Yeah, I feel like we are never ready and like enough ready to know the problems we are going to face. So we need to be ready, but we never know what's going to happen because it is in the natural hands, right? What is going to happen. But have some skills and stud. It is really good to minimize problems. And talking about that, what is the biggest mistake that beginners make?
Huh. The biggest mistake that they make is they don't know what they don't know. That's the biggest mistake.
I love that.
They don't know what they don't know.
Yeah.
Now, I'll give you an example. If you go out paddling, you're going to see experienced paddlers. These are people who are very capable in rapids. They really know what they're doing, okay? You're going to see me wearing my life jacket on a quiet lake in the BWCA. You'll see about half of the people aren't wearing one. You'll see people go down like we have a local river here, which is usually it's ripples to class 1. But when the water gets really high, it can be, I would call it a low technical 2. They don't wear life jackets. Their attitude is, hey, it's only 2 feet deep or 2.5 feet deep. I can stand up in it. No, you can't. That's how people die, standing up when they stand up. Foot gets caught between a couple rocks and the current mows them down. So they don't know what they don't know. They don't understand that. So, I can swim. Yeah, you can swim, but you can't swim if your foot's caught in a rock. That's why you see experienced people wearing their life jackets all the time. I don't know do I have 30 seconds to tell another quick story or not?
31. 31. Exactly.
All right.
You have as much time as you want.
That's
to.
true.
Next time. Okay. Next time.
No.
You have time. You have time. You want to.
It's your episode, Cliff. This is your episode.
It is your show. You are the rock star here.
That's right.
3 years ago, we canoed the Buffalo River in Arkansas. It's one of my favorite rivers. Tens of thousands of people go down this river, from people who are highly experienced to people who've never been in a canoe before, or kayak, or whatever. And when the river's high, there's a couple rapids, one specifically that can be very problematic. In fact, there was a drowning on it 3 years ago when we did it. So we got on the river. When we got on the river, it had been raining for days. The river was really high and it was extremely fast. And as we're going down river, we saw a group of girls in these little kayaks. Well, they weren't girls. They were young women. I'd say they were maybe 17, 18, somewhere there. Nobody's wearing a life jacket. Now, I was a teacher for 30 some years, so it must have been the teacher in me. And I said something to these girls. I said, this river is really high and fast. I said, you could come around a bend and be trapped in a strainer down here, a down tree down there, and you could die. I said, I want you to look at us. I said, we're a bunch of old guys over here. I said, but we're all really experienced in whitewater, and we're all wearing our life jackets. I said, you don't know what you don't know. Now, at this point, I expected her to swear at me or whatever. I couldn't believe what happened. She looks at me and she says, "Oh, thank you, sir." My eyes got, I didn't think anything about it. And so she puts her life jacket on.
Wow.
And just about then, all the other girls started putting theirs on. This was, I'm blown away by this.
I got to tell you this, Cliff. That's because they were from down south. If they were from Chicago, they'd have probably swore at you. Those people are a little more polite down there, and they know they're not. Yeah, they're respectful. Just my experience. I don't know.
Well, we got about an hour downstream, and there was a red kayak wrapped around, or not wrapped, but it was stuck in a down tree. It's just completely stuck in there. And the girls were all standing on shore looking at it, wondering what to do. That was the kayak of the girl who put her life jacket on.
Oh,
so
wow.
She was probably pretty happy this old guy asked her to do that. So I would say the bottom line is people look at equipment. They think they can buy a better canoe, a better kayak, a better paddle, a better tent, whatever, and they're going to be more. The tent's going to be more waterproof. The canoes are going to be more durable, so it won't crash and burn in a rapid. And they should save their money on this and instead go to a school and learn how to paddle a canoe, go to camping seminars, learn some skills, read some books, see some videos, spend your money there, not on stuff.
And it's a lot.
Then spend it on stuff after you know what you're doing.
It's a lot better to rely on yourself than it is equipment. Am I wrong, Cliff?
Absolutely. Well,
and if you don't know how to use the equipment, doesn't matter if you have them or not. Actually, that's a really good tip for all outdoors sports, like in general. Yeah. We don't know about outdoors. We don't know how to survive outside of the city, and we need to learn. So it doesn't matter what sport you are going to do outside, learn before that. And we have information today.
Yeah, yeah, and equipment fails.
And I don't know how to survive in the city, which is why I live in the country.
Well, first thing you're going to need a gun.
I am with you.
You're going to need a gun. Or a knife. Yeah, a gun or a knife to live in the city. No, I made that up, but yeah.
Oh my gosh. Sometimes in outdoors as well, when we have bears, right? It is not... It's not the case for me in Brazil. I don't have bears.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't need. Wow. Well, now we have the part I like the most, the pictures. So, Juan, can you show us some pictures of Cliff? There you go.
There we are. Look at that float plane. I love those.
Yeah.
What are we looking at? What are we looking at?
That's a single otter.
What is the whole idea with the float plane? Explain that to people. How that works.
Well, most of these rivers in Canada, there's no road access. You got to find a way to get in. Sometimes you can get in by train. Okay, that's where train crosses one of the rivers. But most of the time, the only way to get there is by float plane. And these old planes, some of them are pretty old. Some of them go actually back into the 1950s. They've been refitted with newer engines and stuff like that. They're very expensive. The charter is very expensive. But I gotta say, once you take a ride in a old egg beater float plane like this, it's magical. It's a part of great Canadian history, and it's worth every penny to fly in on a trip or fly out on a trip in one of these airplanes. Land on the water, put your canoe on the water. If you love wild places, do it once. Bite the bullet, spend the money, go in on one of these planes. Like I say, these planes are really, really old. And every year, a few of them crash. And every year there becomes fewer and fewer of them. But they're going to run them to the last one, because replacing them with something new that'll do what these babies do is hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
Plus.
The coolest thing I think is, in your book, you're going to talk about that real quick here before we let you go. But in your book, you talk about when you get flown in on a float plane here in a remote place, and you do your trip, and you better be where you're supposed to be when that plane is scheduled to come back and pick you up. And if you're not, bad things can happen.
Yeah, that was true. It's not so true now.
Oh.
Because now we have satellite communication devices and satellite phones. And you really hit on an interesting point, because it used to be when we did these trips, we didn't have anything. What we had was a compass. That's it. Yeah. Later on, we got a GPS, which provided really good positioning, but all of our early trips were with compass, no way to contact anybody. Yes, they did have shortwave radios that you could rent or buy, but they were sort of cumbersome affairs, and they weren't waterproof, so you had to protect them and so forth. But what's happened now is if you don't meet your objective, you people that are going with you are no matter, man. Let's just call on the sat phone and he can come and pick us up early. You see this again and again. But you can say, yes, that's a wonderful safety device, but by the same token, it also has destroyed the determination and what it takes to finish a trip. Because sometimes we had to finish the trip under really severe circumstances. One time I remember we paddled till literally midnight. Well, you're north of the Arctic Circle, so you have light. We paddled till midnight, set up camp, and that plane was there at 7:30 the following morning. So if we hadn't have been there, he would have gone back home, no problem, come again the next day. And every time he comes, I don't remember what the charter fee on the plane cost, but it was probably something like around $10,000 every time he comes.
Wow.
So in other words, the new technology is wonderful, but it is also provided to people an excuse to quit. Okay?
Man, you know what? And here's another thing, Cliff, is when you were out there without a cell phone, without a satellite phone, that really felt like wilderness. Am I right?
Yeah, you can't screw up. And it's a good point you just made, because it also changes your mindset.
Yeah.
When your mindset might be, I don't know if we should cross this lake today. The wind is up pretty high. This could be dangerous. Well, no problem. We'll go close to shore or whatever. It doesn't matter, because if we crash and burn, we'll get out. We'll just call for an airplane. Before, you wouldn't do that. You wouldn't take a chance like that, because you can't call for an airplane.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, what we have here?
See, no,
backpack.
This is just the start of a trip. This happens to be the float plane dock at Yellowknife, which is the capital of the Northwest Territories. A lot of trips begin from here. You can see my old trailer in the background on the left. By the way, I sold that baby earlier this year. It was sad to see her go after, 35 years.
That's cool.
That's so cool.
This is not. Oh yeah, I can't. I don't know. Can't remember if this was my photo or not. But it just shows this is Hudson Bay. It looks like to me, and it may not be, but it looks like they're paddling out right at low tide. Now, we did do a trip where we did have 2 folding canoes. These are folding canoes. We had a pair of them, but I don't know. I don't remember exactly where this was.
Yeah. But it's cool. Like, you got spray decks on there, and that's what you need for, rain and whitewater, big enough whitewater anyway. So that's just
the decks on a canoe. People think that's all about whitewater. Yes, they do protect you in rapids, but the main advantage is they cut your wind by about half, which is really wonderful, and they're warm. So, which means you keep a lot of heat inside the boat. And if it's raining, you can often get by without wearing rain pants, because you got that skirt all tied up around you. Mm-hmm. I know exactly.
I love this. I love this picture. Yeah. This is the camaraderie part, is it not, Cliff? Where you guys are all huddled,
This is called, it is really cold outside and it is really raining, and the wind is blowing bloody murder, because ordinarily this is a CCS Cook Custom Sewing 15-foot square tarp. This tarp would ordinarily be way, way up here in the photo. It's down low because we couldn't keep it up in wind. The wind must have been I'm guessing the wind was about 35 miles an hour, and it was really bitterly cold. This was the North Knife River, probably, I think we're something like about 80 miles from Hudson Bay.
Wow. But you know what? This picture right here is, and honestly, this is the classic canoe trip picture when you're up north, because this is like where everybody sits around, and this becomes as much fun as anything on the trip.
Absolutely. Yeah. Am I right? They say people who well, I was in the military. I was in the Army. But in the Army, you make real special friends. I mean, special pals that you keep forever. And if you've been in combat together, they're even more special. So you get that, but you get the same feeling when you do stuff like that. These are special people. These are like combat buddies. Because in a sense, we've been in combat here.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so true.
The classic campfire cooking, man. I love it.
Oh, this is another one of my. This is
And
one
you
of
are
my
quite the
favorites.
chef. Everybody says Cliff Jacobson makes the best food over a campfire.
Well, you know,
No.
we could talk into cooking. I said, but one of the things that surprises me about this is cooking on one of these trips is actually pretty easy if you just know a few tricks. But many years ago, I wrote a little book called Basic Essentials of Cooking. It didn't do very well. It went out of print. It's been out of print for quite a while. But in that book, I basically said, if I went into Martha Stewart's kitchen, I could make great meals. You'd like them. They wouldn't be as good as Martha's, but you'd like them. But if Martha came on a canoe trip with me and had to do the meals, she'd be a disaster. And the reason why is it's not about recipes. I tell people, if you want recipes, ask Mom. She's got a million of them. And the only difference between an outdoor recipe and an indoor recipe is the outdoor ones use fresh milk and fresh eggs and fresh meat, and the indoor ones use all dehydrated and freeze-dried products. It's not about that. It's about the technique used to make the meals, because the technique has to be different when you got a wind blowing 20 or 30 miles an hour and it's cold and water temperatures are cold and you try to keep stuff hot for seconds. That's what my book was all about. But evidently people didn't think it had much value, so it went out of print pretty quickly. And people keep buying these books with recipes. They're just same stuff you make at home, except you got dried beans instead of fresh beans, whatever.
Cliff, I'm gonna pat myself on the back, and I'm gonna tell you something else. I read that book. In fact, I read every book that you ever wrote, and I learned a lot. First of all, about cozy. Secondly, about how to cook outdoors, and the things you substituted. I mean, and I live it, and I have earned to be a pretty badass cook over a campfire, and largely because of you.
Thanks.
Largely because of you.
Here's an example of what I'm talking about. If I say make pizza on a canoe trip, you know other people are going to make it, right? They're going to try to bake it. It's going to be a disaster. This is a steam fried pizza. Steam fried. It takes 60 seconds to make it, and you're going to like it better than any ones you bake any ones you bake. So you don't have a lot of time when you're out there. You got to prepare stuff quickly. It's got to be nutritious, and it's got to stay hot.
Yep.
Well, just this more.
You see that look at that metal. We call that a windscreen or wind. Windscreen.
That's a windscreen. Yeah,
that's a thing that a lot of people don't know about.
Yeah,
and they try to cook. You can't. Yeah.
Well, I'm getting hungry, guys. Oh my gosh.
Well, you know what's interesting? 99% of people going out, they don't use gasoline stoves anymore.
Yeah,
they're all using these little butane things or propane. And they're nice and everything. They're quiet. They start fast. They run hot and so forth. They're much more expensive to operate, but I haven't seen one yet that has a really good effective windscreen.
Yeah.
And when you do these outdoor trips, really, a windscreen is a really important thing. So if your stove doesn't come with a windscreen, you can rig one up like you saw in the last picture. That's an MSR windscreen.
Yeah. Another outdoor cooking pick. Yeah, man, that's the thing. There's a technique to cooking in the wind, man, and you got to know it.
Now, if you look to the left, of that other picture, you can see it's raining.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So we're inside and protected. We're under a rain tarp, that big rain tarp. This one's a classic. This is the mouth of the North Knife River. And that's Hudson Bay in the background. And there was actually 10 of us. And then there was a couple of guys from Great Britain, England, who happened to come in waiting for the boat out. We were going to a community called Arvia, which is about 35 miles across the bay here. And then there was also a couple Canadians who came in. So I was the only one who had this big tarp. So here we are sitting around this tarp, hoping that we have a charter boat supposed to come in and take us across. This is Button Bay, and this is where the North Knife River flows into Hudson Bay. And this is very this is very cold water. It's ice cold water. Tides are, I can't remember. Tides are what? 4 or 5 feet. Polar bears wandering along the shoreline. You don't want to try to paddle straight across to Churchill. It's about 30, I think 30, I don't know, it's a 10 miles, 5 miles, 6 miles across. I don't remember what it was, but something like more like 40 miles going around. But a lot of people have died crossing this. So if the ice doesn't get you, the polar bears might. But anyway, we're waiting for this boat pickup to come in, and we're literally out of food. It was 5 days before our boat got us. We were out of food. There was a rabbit we saw running around here, and he looked like the last possibility. So we started naming him Stu. Stu. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I love that.
You know what's in Brazil, Maya, you know what stew is? Do you know what stew is?
It's Stu?
Stew. Stew is a meal. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, stew is a meal that's made with potatoes and onions and all kinds of vegetables and whatever meat, and you mix it all up and you boil it for a while. It's delicious. It's called stew, and it's spelled S-T-E-W. Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
I learned something today. That's why I'm talking to you, Cliff. I always learn something with you.
This is actually one of my favorite rivers, believe it or not, and it's one that anybody can do. You can go down this river backwards, sideways, on an inner tube, whatever you want. This is the Little Missouri River in North Dakota. And this area to the left, this is Teddy Roosevelt National Park. And those of you who know anything about Roosevelt, he loved this part of the country. He just loved it. I can't remember what the distance was. I think we did about 120 miles or something on this. Didn't hardly see a soul the whole way. It goes through the Teddy Roosevelt National Park. There's no rapids. It's all dead calm water. The problem with it is it has to be done literally right after a heavy rain, because it just rises real fast with the rain. It falls down to almost nothing. But if you can ever do it, you would love it, because the scenery is wonderful. You'll see wild bison, and you won't see people. You might see a rancher here and there, but you're not going to see any people. It's wonderful.
And by the way, Cliff, do you deliver your books for Brazil, and where people can follow and find you online?
Okay, thanks, Maya. They can go to my website, www.cliffcanoe.com, and I have a shop there. They can go to the shop. They can buy my books, either hard copy or digital. There's also over 100 blogs on my website, and you can access. It's all free. Just click on blogs, and I've covered just about every aspect of canoeing and camping and wilderness and wild animals and bears and bugs and you name it. So there's something there for everybody, and they can contact me off my website by clicking on contact, and I'll get right back to them. So.
That's beautiful. Cliff, listen, I tell you what, we're running a little late here, but we want to thank you so much for coming on our show and talking about wilderness canoeing. And I think it's amazing. So thank you for being here. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing your stories and all your knowledge.
Thank you to both of you. It made me smile to see you guys again.
Ditto, right back at you.
And I love your t-shirt.
Yes.
Thank you. I love yours too.
Oh man, I love it. Well, we're gonna say goodnight, folks. Tune in for next week's episode, Podcaster Party, with our special guest Dennis Rogers, along with Maya Marzaki. This is CW Getz saying thanks for tuning in to Outdoors People. We'll see you next week.
Ciao.